Here we are. How are you, John? Good to see you.
I'm doing okay. Lots going on this end, but all good. Yeah, it's all good.
Good.
And a beautiful day here in Hyde Park, Illinois.
That's good. We're plenty of rain here, so anyway, but that's good. We need rain, so
I know.
all good.
Yeah. And I spent a few days because I was teaching an intensive training over the weekend and needed to kind of get away. So I was dog and house sitting up in Kenosha.
Oh, Kenosha. Yeah, sure.
Kenosha, Wisconsin.
And
this lovely, sweet dog was one of those dogs that like has a hyper reaction to thunder. And there were like two or three nights of thunder. Poor thing. I used to have a dog like that, and I gave her drugs, which she didn't like at all, but it does work.
Did it help? Did it help?
Eventually it helps, and then it knocks her out for half the next day. It's just like I felt badly for her, but
yeah, do what you have to do.
Sleep. Yeah, exactly. So I'm glad I'm not like that.
Yes, and on that note, equanimity.
Yes. Oh, I knew there was a reason I brought that in. Yes, Upeka.
The important thing about equanimity is, at least one important thing to me. To me, it's one of the hardest. But is seeing the difference between that and indifference, because it's just so easy to fall into indifference when you're looking for equanimity. And I think that's something that a lot of us fall into.
Yeah, and I guess one of the reasons I brought it up is because I'm doing a day long on Saturday in New York, in fact, which is kind of focused on equanimity.
Yeah.
It's in the world that we live in right now, sort of finding balance in the midst of it all, which is really what equanimity is this balanced mind. And of course, it's also, as we know, it's comes at the end of a lot of lists.
It does.
The 7 factors of awakening, it kind of comes as the 16th of the 16 steps of the Anapanasati Sutta, is sometimes interpreted that way. And then it's the last of the
Brahma-viharas.
It's the last of the Brahma-viharas.
Yep.
So basically, but it's sort of rooted in the Brahma-viharas, right? So it's, if we look at it that way. And we can also, I think it's also worth looking at in terms of I guess we could say relative equanimity or equanimity in our like in the sense realm, and then absolutely equanimity in the sort of otherworldly realm, unworldly realm, and how we work between those, and but if we're bringing our practice into the world and we don't have some sense of balance these days in particular, we're going to be batted around, from place to place, and emotion to emotion, and issue to issue. And, there was so much going on last week just in our own political realm.
Yeah.
There, to say nothing about elsewhere in the world, that it was hard not to be sort of, one could say, I just got to get out of here, got to escape.
Yeah.
And
that's, that can be sometimes useful, just, which is it's a form of
self-care.
Or what is it? Guarding the sense doors, which we understand is, not ideal in the longer term. You want to be able to deal with these things. But in the short term, guarding the sense doors can be the most, skillful thing to do.
Yeah. That's basically when we go on retreat, we're guarding the sense doors to a great extent, even though we even though we put ourselves in beautiful places to go on retreat often. So one does wonder.
Well, but the other thing I was going to say about equanimity, I mean, from my own past, just experience recently with going to the hospital, is that I think it's important for us to understand both that equanimity is the goal in many cases, but also we have to be really open to the fact that we may not be able to get there. And so, because if we push ourselves towards equanimity, we'll end up in indifference, and that doesn't really help.
Right.
And
one can't push themselves. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, I mean, for example, in my case, before I got into the hospital, I had this, pain, and I was aware that the practice was to be equanimous to the pain. But there's a state of pain, at least in my experience, in which that's possible, relatively, minor pain where you can sort of be equanimous and sort of, be okay with it. But if it gets high enough, that just doesn't work for me. And all I can do is to be aware of the aversion, and just, yep, there is the aversion, and I don't want that.
Well, also, it's like one can be equanimous toward it, but that doesn't mean one pushes their way through it necessarily.
Yeah.
Thinking that will take care of it, because obviously in your case, something had to get done.
Right. Well, yeah. I didn't know that at the time, but yeah.
Issues,
right? Yeah, absolutely.
So, it's true. I mean, and one can deal with the pain to a point, physical pain. I mean, I work with people sometimes who have very serious physical pain, and these practices can be, we've talked about this in other podcasts, these practices can be really key. At least in terms of changing our relationship to it. And that is an act of equanimity. It's like, because we find balance within that. And we recognize that trying to push it away isn't helping, so it doesn't mean we close our eyes to what's going on.
Right.
So here's the pain. Yeah, this sucks. It's really hard. Let me just, be with this, as opposed to muscle my way through it. I'm just going to be with this and find my way through it, going to the hospital, making sure I'm okay physically, whatever. But then when it comes to, other kinds of not personally physical situations, but the world as it is right now. Indifference would be sort of saying, I see it, but there's nothing I can do about it. Therefore, I'm going to just move on. Or I see it, I
don't care. I'm just not going to care. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where, that's why equanimity based on certainly on loving kindness, rooted in loving kindness, is a very different experience than indifference.
Yeah.
And and when it comes to dealing with the sense stores, if we didn't have any sort of equanimity, we would be bouncing around all over the place, looking for everything we want. And of course, as we let go, as those, I don't want to say as we let go of those desires, but as we let go of greed for those desires to be fulfilled, then something shifts. In other words, can we, and I think, can we have equanimity toward our desires? And as we cultivate it, that actually happens. So, I think that what you were saying before is like, you can't force equanimity. It has to, it arises through our practice. And, and we make, I remember an image once I saw somewhere. It was a teacher. I can't remember where it came from. It's like paddling a canoe or a kayak, actually. You sort of need to keep things in balance. If you sort of veer off this way, then you come this way, and vice versa. And sometimes it's hard, right? Because there are storms.
Yeah.
And you do the best you can. You can't, like, if you're in the midst of a storm, you can't stop the storm.
No.
Right. So how do we
That's right.
develop that quality that allows us to be balanced within the midst of it?
Yeah.
Um,
I think
and,
it's interesting. There's I think it was in the Visuddhimagga. I remember reading, I think it was there, where Buddhaghosa talks about the quality of equanimity when it comes to the Brahma Viharas. And one of the things that he points to is that when we're dealing with the other Brahma Viharas, like let's say loving kindness or compassion, they can get caught up in defilements if we begin to feel bad because the other person isn't happy. If we begin to take it personally, in other words, we begin to feel it begins to affect our own state of mind when the country is going to hell and we have compassion for all these people that are being hurt. And that's a place where this practice of equanimity, as long as it doesn't turn into indifference, can be so important, because we are, at the end of the day, we're not in control. We're not in control of ourselves, much less the world outside. There are, of course, things we can do, but at the end of the day, like you say, we can't stop the storm from coming. Much as we would like to. And I know myself, I get caught up sometimes in feeling really bad because I feel like I should be able to change things. And that leads to a sense of frustration and anger and depression, really, because I feel, helpless. And that's a bad place to be in. And it's one that I think can come up even in the context of kindness and compassion, because as we push those too far, as we push them too much, we begin to again get that frustration where it's like, I want to do something and I can't, or at least I can't do enough to make the kind of difference I would like to make. And that's, I think, where this kind of practice of indifference and of realizing that all of this is bigger than us can help.
Absolutely. And that's the challenge, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, if we take it all on, we feel horrible and we want to do something, but we're too, there's nothing. We get stuck in that cycle of, oh, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And other than giving money or going out and protesting or whatever, there are things we can do, but we're not going to necessarily see the result very quickly. And so, and yet, right, we want to be able to, and I haven't been put there yet. I keep waiting for like the National Guard to show up in Hyde Park. Trump keeps threatening, and our government keeps. But there have been, certainly ICE issues here, not in Hyde Park, at least not in where we're living. And if I were seeing that happen, how would I work with it? And and I think part of it is also it can impact as that quality evolves in each of us. It can at least, because what happens, of course, the reactive mode would be we see something bad happening or what appears to be bad happening, and we blame the person who's, we can find ourselves in a blaming place, which may be appropriate. Not well, the blame doesn't get us anywhere, but we will be angry at the person who's inciting the problem, i.e. an ICE agent. And of course, the ICE agent is just, quote, doing their job. We don't like that job, but they're doing what they're told to do. So, and if we were in the midst of that, if we were between these two, this is completely hypothetical, although people have been there, we were between the two, right? The person provoking and the victim of that. The person, it's like, how would we hold that in a way that would be skillful? That's a very hypothetical question, a rhetorical question that I do not have the answer for because I've never been there.
Mm-hmm.
But if we think about it in terms of that quality, you would want to act responsibly and appropriately, and that appropriate response comes from that balanced place of equanimity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we can see it in all sorts of the teachings, in terms of uh, the Buddha never acting from anger,
Mm-hmm.
even at
Yeah.
people he's angry with,
Mm-hmm.
or he's upset with, like his cousin or whoever. There's this groundedness that comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, then the question is cultivating it through our own meditation practice.
Mm-hmm.
And when do we find ourselves trying to fight the hyperactive mind or whatever, as opposed to saying, oh, this is the mind in hyperactivity, or this is the mind in, rumination, or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
Do we find ourselves trying to push that away and stop it, or can we just be with it in those moments?
Yeah.
And then the question is taking that same quality into the world.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets interesting and hard, I think. So
Yeah. I mean, I think that my experience, personally, as well as sort of seeing how people react around me and online and stuff like that, is the feeling that true equanimity is a high bar. It's very hard to get there. I find, and so at least in my practice, I think my practice is sometimes I can get there again for small things, but my practice is one of watching out for indifference. And it's sort of like being aware of that and sort of seeing, oh, okay, I'm moving in towards indifference, I'm getting burned out, because I see those as similar, this kind of, the mind gets overwhelmed by, usually it's not physical things. This is more mental proliferation of one kind or another. When my mind gets overwhelmed, it tends to go in the direction of indifference, of just screw it, screw all these people, whatever, it's just like, and that's a very, to me, a very natural kind of thing. You just get, as they say, you're filled up, you're filled up to here, and you just, throw it away. And I think it's in my practice, I think it's important. I found it important to just to pay attention to that when that happens, and to be aware that that's not equanimity, that is indifference. And it's like, okay, that's what's happening now. I'm filled up with this. Usually there's a great deal of underlying anger there, and the anger is coming out in the screw all that. The screw all that, which on the surface seems to be indifference, is really a kind of anger, at the whole situation. And sort of wanting to throw everything into the garbage, basically, and start again. And it's sort of being with that and seeing that, and I was going to say trying not to act on it, although usually there's nothing to act on. It's usually just sort of this internal kind of frustration, anger, feeling of impotence, and not being able to do anything, and so just
right.
Yeah.
And so two things come to my mind as you're saying that. One is to have self-compassion for the fact that this is how you are now, but the other is like, it's like, okay, right now I can't do anything about this.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not to say I'm not going to do something about it, or I'm never going to do something about it. It's just right now.
Yeah.
I need to and not give ourselves a hard time for that. But, otherwise, and I'm kind of, without getting into any details. I mean, my life right now is a little out of balance,
Mm.
for various reasons, and it's coming into balance soon, as I'm making some transitions. Um, and I could be going crazy, right? I mean, because there's like, I got to do this, I got to do that, and it's like, and I have to give my practice credit for the fact that I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, or I should say, maybe I'm giving it a little more credit than it deserves, because it at least in the ways that feeling of complete imbalance could result in unskillful actions. What
Mm.
happens is, to some degree, it comes out in other ways, like not sleeping as well,
Yeah.
and so, one can kind of work with that. But I'd rather that than have it like really obstruct other things that I'm doing that
Right.
need to, that I need to be with. And so can I bring equanimity into this life right now? Can I
Mm-hmm.
find balance in this moment?
Well,
And
or at least acknowledge that, this is a moment of going crazy, and, here I am.
but yeah, and that's and one can have equanimity toward that,
Yeah.
to some degree. So it's
Yeah.
not, as opposed to the indifference which would be sort of ignoring it,
Right.
saying,
Mm-hmm.
or
Pretending it doesn't exist. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
It's spiritual bypassing, basically.
yeah. And then, when you sort of read about this notion of unworldly equanimity, that is, some would say it's like a jhana state. I mean, in
Well,
meditation,
it is
right?
the fourth
Yeah,
jhana. I mean,
yeah.
literally.
So, what is that like?
Mm.
And what does that even mean? Um, I mean, yeah, you can take the literal description of it. And how does one actually achieve that, right? And so just in terms of formal practice, I mean, one way of kind of looking at it is, once we've achieved a certain level of samadhi, of unification, the sense desires are completely at ease, at least.
Mm-hmm.
There's no push or pull. There's just this, and from that place, one can start to observe the impermanent nature of whatever phenomena is arising and passing away in the mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that, and just getting into that last tetrad of the Anapanasati Sutta, where we're talking about dispassion and letting go. And if you've let go to that extent, there's nothing to throw you in any way, or one way or the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is this kind of freedom, and complete, I guess, complete equanimity, whatever that is. And then what do we do with that? Because we can't necessarily stay in that state,
Right.
if we call it that.
You mean the fourth jhana or something like that? Some deep state of meditation. Yeah.
I mean, we can, but then what do we
Not
bring?
forever.
How do we bring that to the world?
Yeah. Right.
And,
right.
And once you've sort of achieved that, then when you come into the world, and I mean, obviously the Buddha is the prime example, right? He could sit in the middle of, he could confront whatever he was confronting from that place.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we kind of practice in little ways around this, the ways that impact me directly,
Mm-hmm.
can I turn toward that from a place of balance? And can I be with that in a way that then allows me to respond in a skillful fashion?
Yeah.
And then if I find myself in a confrontational situation with another, can I do the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, I don't have that many confrontations. But there are other kinds of confrontations. Just sitting in traffic, or
Mm-hmm.
when when the subway's not working the way you want it to work. All those kind of little things,
Sure.
And we have so many moments to practice in.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, I mean, one of the ways that I think it was Tanisaro describes the state of equanimity is a state of imperturbability, which I think is a good way to look at it. A good way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's not indifference, but imperturbability. And those are very, very different. Imperturbability is a sense of not being shiftable, because you're in balance. You can't. It's not being moved by the worldly winds, however they blow. And yeah, I mean, that's definitely where we want to be. And in that kind of place, we can perhaps even enter a situation that might be confrontational, quote unquote, but that we will defuse, or we'll be able to defuse, because we will not come at it with anger. We will not come at it with taking things personally, which is our normal way of looking at things, is to take these situations personally. Why is the subway stopped, when I've got to get to work or whatever? It's like it's trying to do something to me, and once we can depersonalize it, it becomes easier to be imperturbable about it, because we realize, like I was saying before, we realize that it's out of our control. I mean, there are always little things that we can do. We should never feel that we're powerless, because we have power, but the power we have is circumscribed. There's only a certain amount that we can actually do, and the rest of it is just up to causes and conditions.
Right. Yeah. As long as the imperturbability, not a word I say very often, it doesn't imply that we don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing. And that's why it's so important that these are rooted in the other realm of our hearts. That we do care, and in any given moment, we can only do so much. And so, that's what we have to recognize, and hopefully we do what we can.
Yeah. And we're caring from a place, I don't know how we can get there, but a place of egolessness, where we ourselves are not, it's not about us. It's not about something personal. And so it's a care that is a sort of a more generalized understanding of the right and the wrong, and that there are things to be done in this situation to make things better, without personalizing it.
Yeah. So it's a quality to aspire to, but not to force.
Yeah,
exactly.
I
can't force myself into that.
No.
I have to evolve to that point, or recognize it when it's there, and recognize it when it's not there, and sort of wondering what's getting in the way of that. And generally, for me, what would be getting in the way of equanimity would be an emotional attachment to the result.
Yep.
Right? And or just so much anger.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, and sometimes that anger is completely justified. But how do I hold that from a place of equanimity? That's the challenge. How to work with this world as it is, this moment.
Screwed up as it is, as it always is. That's the first noble truth.
Of course. It just seems to be a little more in our face right now.
It is. Yeah, it's more to practice with.
Yeah. I'd rather it weren't there, but here it is. So, okay, well, I hope this has been helpful to those that are here and listening, and let us know.
Yeah, let us know. And if you want to help us wake up a little bit more, we could always use a cup of coffee.
Yeah, that's the true path to awakening, isn't it?
True path to awakening is coffee.
It's coffee, yeah. Okay. I knew there was a trick. Just getting that right balance. Okay.
So diggingthedharma.com. Yep. Feel free to go and buy us a cup of coffee, or 3 or 4, or become a member. buying us coffees regularly, and that helps defer the regular cost that we have to keep this thing on the air,
or whatever this is. I don't think it's the air. It's it's like
on the tubes, the inner tubes, right?
Okay. All right, friends, keep digging the Dharma, and we'll see you next time.
Great to see you, Jon.
Likewise.